Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's Dillon James right here on JDF Sports. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening. I'm riding solo on the show, and we have a new stream. I actually had to restart the stream. We had a connection issue with our third-party company, Restream, and I have decided to go straight to the source. I am streaming directly to YouTube at this point. No Twitch, unfortunately, this evening. It's just going to be YouTube, so hopefully you're hopped on, tuned in, and ready to go with the main source of NFL news right here on Out of Bounds, Dillon James. We have a lot to discuss tonight. We have the Titans to talk about. We have the Patriots to talk about and their shellacking of the Carolina Panthers. We'll also be discussing some injuries across the league. Lamar Jackson going down with injury. We also have a big name wide receiver out there that got injured for the Miami Dolphins. We'll also be discussing the Cleveland Browns, their quarterback situation, a new starting quarterback, but a remaining quarterback 3 who will still be in that third spot on the roster, which I'm sure you all know who I'm discussing. Last but not least, I have a game to watch for you in Week 5, so I hope you all will stay for that. So if you are in the chat already, welcome. Feel free to pop your questions in the chat this evening. I'll be answering anything and everything that comes to me in the chat this evening. Since I am riding by myself tonight, Tyler is working. Tyler has got his work schedule shifted, so now we will not be on Wednesdays anymore. Hopefully we'll be figuring out our weekly show schedule soon for you all to know. I will be sharing it on our social media channels for JDF Sports. Also for Out of Bounds as well, I'll be sharing it on our socials there too. So hopefully you all will migrate over with us to this new night and time. Most likely it'll still be 9 p.m. Eastern time, but we're looking at different days. Most likely Tuesday, but we'll see how that works out, how that goes. So welcome everybody. We will jump into our topics this evening because there is a lot to discuss. And one of the biggest things to discuss this evening will be my Tennessee Titans. Now, we got Brian Callahan last year as our head coach. You've heard my displeasure about Brian Callahan so far this season. It has not been good for the Tennessee Titans this year so far, and the record indicates that. We are 0-4 on the season so far. Our first week, we played the Denver Broncos, losing to them by 8 points. Close game. We hit on the spread. We were plus 8.5 in that game. So fairly close game for a team that was expected to be a Super Bowl contender this year with the Denver Broncos, having Sean Payton at the helm, Bo Nix at the helm as well at quarterback, his second year. A lot of high expectations for the Broncos, and they've played fairly well so far this season. They were a little shaky in the first week against the Titans, and they've evened out at this point. The Titans, however, have gotten worse each and every week they've played so far this season. Kevin is in the chat. Fitz, thank you. Welcome back. He did ask about thoughts on Drake May, so I'll get to that now. Drake May has actually been playing very, very well for the Patriots so far. And that's one thing I miss about Mike Vrabel. And this kind of ties into the current topic of the Tennessee Titans. Mike Vrabel was a very, very good head football coach. Did I agree with his firing at the time? Yes. Was it all his fault at the time when he was fired that the team was playing so poorly? Not all his fault, no. There was one man who actually was at fault even more so than Mike Vrabel, but that man had already been fired the season prior. John Robinson was a huge problem for this Tennessee Titans team from 2020 to 2022. The drafting of this team had been horrendous. I think looking back at it, looking at those 3 drafts, I think we may have 2 players still on this roster from those 3 drafts. That's a huge indictment on the drafting capability of John Robinson. That's the reason why John Robinson is no longer with us here in Nashville. And he did share a post on Instagram today with his significant other, telling her happy birthday. And reiterated the fact that he was the issue in Tennessee, kind of sarcastically, saying #WeAss, which is a quote from Cam Ward this past weekend after they lost again to the Houston Texans in Houston, where Amy Adams Strunk lives, who is the controlling owner of the Tennessee Titans. So, not a very good showing for the Titans going to their former home in Houston to get shellacked the way that they did, 26-0 against a divisional rival who was also 0-3 going into this game. That was a huge talking point, actually. Talking about local media, that was a huge talking point this past week about how the Titans were 7.5-point underdogs to a team that was 0-3. Well, guess what? Your team is 0-3 as well. So, I mean, are we surprised they were favored by that much, the Texans? They were favored by 7.5 going into this game? Well, we shouldn't have been, because looking at the final score, it indicates that the Texans are a better team than the Titans at this moment in time, even though C.J. Stroud has had his woes so far. Jeffrey Simmons had a huge play in that game to sack C.J. Stroud right off the line. It was the quickest get-off time for an interior defensive lineman this season. I think it was 0.32 seconds. Crazy. Jeff Simmons is still playing out of his mind. Anyway, going back to Drake May. Sorry, that was a soliloquy there, Fitz. Apologize for that. Drake May has been playing very, very well. Mike Vrabel has put him into a position where they can be successful and they can stay competitive in games. Both games they've lost so far this season, they've only lost by a touchdown. The other two games, they won pretty handedly. So, Mike Vrabel knows how to put a roster into a competitive mode, into a competitive game. Each and every week they go out there for a game. And I think he'll continue to do that for the Patriots. The Patriots, again, the defense on the Patriots, defensive line is pretty good. Pretty good. And Drake May as the quarterback there has been playing very well with Mike Vrabel at the helm. Fitz says Io Manor looks great. Also, Jeff Simmons is a dog. I agree. Also, the Texans' O-line is terrible. It is. It is. And, you know, another team that spent poorly on an offensive line, the Cincinnati Bengals, are showing you that you probably do need to spend money on your offensive line. You probably need to spend money on your offensive line in the offseason. And the Texans didn't do that. The Texans actually traded away pieces on the offensive line this offseason. And it shows. It shows for the Texans. That's why you look at the Colts or the Jaguars probably winning the division this year. And there was a huge TikTok that came out last week. Tyrell and Fitz were back on the airwaves, talking about NFL football and other topics as well. And during that TikTok, they did talk about C.J. Stroud not being it, as they say. He ain't it. He's just not. It's funny how we have two quarterbacks who are considered generational players. Maybe C.J. Stroud wasn't considered a generational player coming out of college, but Trevor Lawrence was. And look what's happening in Jacksonville right now with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, Trevor Lawrence still is not it. They're playing okay football right now. I think it's more so a team effort than something Trevor Lawrence is doing down there in Jacksonville, in Duval County, as they say. But I seriously think that C.J. Stroud just is not the guy. He had an amazing rookie season. It hasn't developed the way he needed to. Lawrence is in that same boat. Yep, I agree. Fitz. It's been a disservice to that team, especially with the Jacksonville Jaguars paying Trevor Lawrence all that money on a second contract. And what do they have to show for it? Some very bad losses at home to division rivals, typically. That's the best they got. And they only made it to the playoffs 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? I believe it was 2 years ago, yeah, when they had Josh Dobbs as Titans quarterback. And they said it was an incomplete pass. It was a fumble instead of an incomplete pass on that last play to give the Jacksonville Jaguars a touchdown the waning minutes of that game to send them to the playoffs and to eliminate the Titans that year. Unfortunate. Bradley Keith chiming in, saying the biggest surprise out of the Titans division is absolutely the Colts. Who saw the Daniel Jones resurgence coming? Giants fans. We talked about it last week. A lot of Giants fans are crying on the inside, and probably the outside as well. Looking at Daniel Jones, looking at Saquon Barkley, there have been some players that left New York to greener pastures, and they have been capitalizing on their opportunities outside of New York. And Daniel Jones, it is a bit of a surprise to me. I did not expect this from Daniel Jones, the Indianapolis Colts quarterback this season, to be leading the clubhouse in the AFC South. But he is. And it's going to be very hard to stop them the way they're playing football right now. Having that rushing attack with Jonathan Taylor, having the Danny Dimes come back, Indiana Jones up there in Indianapolis playing some really, really good football. Shane Steichen knows that. I mean, it's so funny too. Talking about this, even at the beginning of the season. In the offseason, when JDF came back, we had a stream, and there's a TikTok on our JDF Sports page if you want to go look at it as well, talking about Daniel Jones. Crazy to think that Daniel Jones came in to compete with Anthony Richardson, and the moment he stepped foot into that facility, Shane Steichen knew Daniel Jones was going to be QB1 in 2025. That just shows you how poorly the Colts organization had been run up until this year. When the daughters came in, when Jim Irsay's daughters came in and started running the team, because unfortunately Jim Irsay passed away this offseason, rest in peace. After they took over, you could just see an imminent change. They don't have to worry about this quarterback anymore. They don't have to worry about Anthony Richardson anymore. Let him develop on the bench, if that's what they're calling it. I don't think he's going to develop into a quarterback that's going to be a starting quarterback in this league. I didn't think he was going to do that when he was coming out of college. I did not think he was going to be a quarterback that was going to see the field a whole hell of a lot in the NFL. And unfortunately, it has panned out that way for Anthony Richardson. And Daniel Jones came in and said, if he's not going to take it, I will. And he has. And he's looked very good doing it. So kudos to the Colts. Kudos to Daniel Jones. Kudos to Wesley Burton, big Colts fan that watches the show. They deserve what they've gotten so far. They've been playing very, very good football. We'll see if they are able to continue that throughout the rest of the season. It's probably going to be a two-man race in the AFC South between the Colts and the Jaguars as the division title owners. Because I said it at the beginning of the season too. The Houston Texans will not make the playoffs this year. That was my bold prediction. I mean, I remember Alex Handley looking at me like I had been taking crazy pills. But look at us now. Look at the Texans now. C.J. Stroud is just not looking good. But the Patriots are looking very good. Speaking of, Drake May doing really well in the second year. I would have loved to have seen Mike Vrabel with Will Levis in his second year. However, we got Brian Callahan instead. Which leads me to the Brian Callahan conversation. It's been rough the past 21 games with Brian Callahan. He is 3-18 as the Titans head coach. This past weekend, he played up against the Texans. Division rivalry. Texans were favored by 7.5 going into this game in Houston. And in the first half, the Titans defense was doing their job. Titans defense held the Texans to 6 points in the first half. However, the Texans defense was doing better. They held the Titans to 0 points in the first half. And you would think, oh, well then they must have scored some points in the second half, right? Wrong. The Titans did not score a single point in the second half, nor the game, and they lost 26-0 against the Texans. Cam Ward at the end of the game quoted, "We ass." That was the quote. He talked about how they dropped the first quarter of their effing games. That was another quote. And what else is there to lose at this point? I love the fire from Cam. I love the fact that he's coming out now and he is expressing his frustration to fans, frustration to the media. It shows us that he cares, and we knew how much he cared coming into this organization, coming in every morning, 5 a.m. You all know the story. You all know the story of Cam Ward coming out of Miami, number 1 overall draft pick, one of the least talked about number 1 overall draft picks in probably NFL history. And we see how it's been going so far. And we know why he was the least talked about, because of the team around him, not necessarily Cam, the team around him. We've seen 4 games so far of the Brian Callahan experience in year 2 with Cam Ward to see how he could develop this young quarterback in the NFL to become successful. I can safely say, after 4 games in the 2025-26 NFL season, Brian Callahan is not it. He is not the head coach that the Titans need at this moment. He's not the head coach that Cam Ward needs at this moment. After week 3, I felt as though this experiment should come to an end. I came on this show last week saying that Brian Callahan should be fired because he is not going to do well with Cam Ward. He is not going to develop Cam Ward into the quarterback we all think he can be and what we expect him to be for the Tennessee Titans moving forward. He decided to give up play calling last week. Fans out there thought that this would provide a boost to the team potentially. I was hesitant. I walked into this Texans game with no expectations. I did not bet on a single NFL football game this past weekend. 0. I was in Florida as well. I could only do it in a Hard Rock app if I did, and I just decided not to. Regardless, no expectations going into this weekend. But somehow, some way, Brian Callahan ruined my expectations. He was less than my 0 expectations for this game in Houston. It wasn't play calling. It was, you could sense that this team, first 3 quarters, actually, let's talk about the first half. First half, Joey Sly, kicker for the Titans, had 2 kicks, less than 50 yards, that he was awarded during this game. Missed both of them. Not a good start. Could have gone in at halftime, tied 6-6, missed both field goals. Okay. Down by 6 points. Potentially they could come back. Second half, offense just flat out did not move the ball well at all. It wasn't even the offensive line. The offensive line was actually holding up pretty well this weekend, all things considered. Still could not get things done on the offensive side of the ball. Defense started getting tired, as we've seen every game this season so far. It was 6-0 up until the fourth quarter, and the Texans scored 20 points unanswered to end the game. At one point, Brian Callahan, at the end of the game, it was 4th and 2, decided to just punt the ball. Instead of showing his team that he still had faith. Crazy things have happened in this league. Ask Tom Brady against the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl. Crazy things happen in this league each and every weekend. There's no reason to give up like that. I talked about it a few weeks ago. There was a time when it was at home against the Colts. No, I'm sorry, against the Rams. 35 seconds left to go in the game. Instead of Brian Callahan taking a penalty and stopping the clock, he decided to allow the clock to run 10 seconds. The clock ran out the rest of the game, and the game was over. Texans win. Instead of the Titans getting another chance for the football, Not even necessarily to win the game, but to show that, hey, we can still fight. We can still potentially score some points in this game on a high. And Brian Callahan said, no thanks. Went out to the middle of the field, shook hands with Sean McVay, asked him for a job on his next staff next season. Kidding, maybe. Not sure. There might have been a microphone out there. We could find out very quickly. And decided to just walk away at that point. At that moment, I realized that Brian Callahan's just not the guy. I think the team is realizing Brian Callahan's not the guy. This team gets worse each and every week. And the defense just falls flat in the fourth quarter because they realize this offense cannot do anything. They cannot get points on the board. They do not support them on that side of the ball. They're not holding up their end of the bargain. Special teams has been up until this game. And these two misses for field goal kicks, I'll let it slide. But you cannot go out there each and every week and have performances like you've seen from the Tennessee Titans offense and expect to win games. Through 4 games so far this season, the Titans have 210.5 yards per game, total yards per game. That's 31st in the league. 12.8 points per game. That's dead last in the league. It does not need to continue. At this point, I feel as though it is a disservice to Cam Ward and a disservice to these players that were drafted in this draft in particular because of how strong these players have been. Chimere Dike, Eric Iomanner, Gunnar Helm, some of these really, really good rookies, they're at a disservice right now because of the coaching staff that's in place, especially Brian Callahan, not having that fight in him to go out there and be competent. Go out there and just go out there and do something. Go out there and score some points. That's what you're supposed to do in this league. Have that drive to do something with it. And he just hasn't yet. And I don't think he will yet, ever. He's not that kind of guy. It was funny. Paul Kaharski, local reporter for the Titans. I see a message from Brad. I'll pop up in just a second. But Paul Kaharski asked after the game, Brian, do you think that your team is still resilient out there? Do you think they still are a resilient team like you've said in the past? And Brian Callahan comes back and says, Paul, I know what you're doing. I'm not going to answer that shit right now. That's the most fire you ever see from Brian Callahan. The most. Mike Vrabel had his issues. He was hard-headed. He wouldn't have made the decision that Brian Callahan made last week to give up play calling, for instance. I'm not necessarily saying Mike Vrabel was play caller. He was not. But he would not make that kind of decision for his own staff. And that's probably the reason why he was fired in the first place. I think Tim Kelly was on the chopping block, and Mike Vrabel didn't want Tim Kelly to leave, didn't want Tim Kelly to get fired. And that was similar to some of the times where we've had coaches for the Titans get fired in the past. Mike Mularkey, for instance, had an offensive coordinator, would not let him go. Therefore, the team let him go instead, and that's when we got Mike Vrabel. So hard-headedness at the head coaching position was an issue for Mike Vrabel, and we have not seen that from Brian Callahan. However, he does not accept responsibility for his actions. He has not shown that yet, and he just doesn't have fire. No fire at all. No will to go out there and push. I'm not saying go on 4th down every time like Dan Campbell. I'm just saying go out there and be competitive. Don't be so conservative with your play calling or Bo's play calling. Go out there and win a game. Win a game. You're not going to keep this job after this season. I highly doubt Brian Callahan will. I am 99.9% sure. I think I was 99.5% sure last week. 99.9% sure that Brian Callahan will not be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans at the end of this season. So go out there, put your best foot forward, and win a game. Show your next employer you can actually do that. Brad says, is Brian Callahan a bad coach as an individual, or is it more of an indictment on the Zach Taylor coaching tree? The Bengals look non-competitive too, just so hard to find quality head coaches. I think it's similar to the Tom Brady and Bill Belichick storyline. Even though Tom Brady did go to the Bucs and have some success down there, which Bruce Arians was not a bad coach. I think Bruce Arians was still a good coach. I think that they still had success because of each other. Tom Brady's a hell of a quarterback. But I think that both of them, both Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, were having success because of each other. Having as much success because of each other. And in this situation, I think Zach Taylor and Brian Callahan together, they had a great relationship. They knew what the structure was on the team, and they were yin and yang. But I think separately, they're just not that good by themselves, especially with Zach Taylor. You have a generational quarterback. Without your generational quarterback, Jake Browning's out there. He has not looked good over the past 2 weeks. Jameis Winston still is waiting for a phone call from the Cincinnati Bengals to say, we are trading for you and giving the Giants a 5th-round draft pick. Jameis Winston is on the bench in New York. He deserves to be on a roster somewhere, being a quality backup to start for an injured star like Joe Burrow. He should be on the Bengals roster currently today, starting for that team come week 5. But Jake Browning is still there, and Jake Browning was successful when Brian Callahan was there as well. So again, I think that it's a bit of yin and yang when it comes to Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor. I think they completed each other. So I would not be surprised if Brian Callahan goes back to Zach Taylor, if he gets fired from the Titans at the end of the season, or if they both get fired. I would not be surprised if they wind up on the same team somewhere else. It's a great question, though. I mean, it is odd to think that Zach Taylor has not had successful coaches coming out of his coaching tree compared to Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, these guys coming out. They usually have success, but Zach Taylor has not had this similar success of grooming head coaches for the National Football League. So Brian Callahan will not be the head coach in 2026-27, but I still think you cut it off now. You don't wait. There's no reason to wait. People keep talking about how it will be detrimental to Cam Ward's development. What is more detrimental? Stopping the bleeding now and providing someone that's already in the room. Bo Hardigree, for instance. Mike McCoy is there. He was the former head coach for the San Diego Chargers back in the day. He could step up and be the head coach for now. Bones Fossil, which I really like Bones Fossil, listening to him in his press conferences. He has that fire. He has that tenacity to go out there and do something. I think he would as a head coach. You have guys on the staff that have head coaching experience. Would you rather let go of Brian Callahan now, cut ties completely, and let somebody from his staff become the head coach for the year, or wait till the end of the season, let Brian Callahan mold Cam Ward incorrectly for 13 more weeks, and then hand him off to another head coach? If you know he's going to be gone anyway, why keep him? There's no reason for him to stay any longer. We've already seen enough quarterbacks ruined in this Titans organization over the years. Don't let Cam Ward be another one. Don't let Cam Ward be added to that list of quarterbacks who were ruined by the head coaching, the head coaching staff that is in place for the Titans moving forward. There's just no reason to. So that was my Titans rant for the evening. Let's get into the injuries that are happening across the league, because there are plenty of those. Lamar Jackson this weekend had a hamstring injury. We've talked about Lamar Jackson, his injury history. For years, they were talking about him being a top 10 quarterback. I say he was a top 10 playmaker, not a top 10 quarterback, or top 10 athlete, not a top 10 quarterback. He had started to get into that realm of top 10 quarterback in my eyes. I think he'd already gotten to that point in my list of top quarterbacks in the league so far. He had not missed a game since 2022 with injury. It's been a while, been a few seasons. Looks like he might miss this weekend, might not. John Harbaugh came out and said it's day-to-day with the players that are injured on his roster. Someone reiterated, are you talking about Lamar Jackson being day-to-day? And then he kind of just shut down the conversation saying, I'm just not going to say anything about it at all. So Lamar Jackson could be out this weekend, could not be out, could go out there and play. How do they play that? How do they slow roll the Lamar Jackson situation to make sure he's healthy in the long run? It might not be worth it at this point because the Ravens are 1-3 after losing to the Chiefs this weekend, 37-20. Are they going to be a competitive team in the AFC like everyone thought they would be, like I thought they would be? I felt as though the Ravens were going to be going to the Super Bowl this year. I think it was the Ravens versus the Lions was my final pick for the Super Bowl this year. With the way the Ravens have been playing, the way that Derrick Henry has been fumbling, not very good the first 3 weeks. Still not very good in the fourth week. I think he had 8 rushes. I think he had 52 yards rushing, something along. Or I'm sorry, it might have been more than that. I'll double check those numbers. Still, not a very good performance by Derrick Henry as well. But the Chiefs came back. They were able to win that game. Without Lamar Jackson, though, the Ravens might be looking at using Derrick Henry even more. They have Cooper Rush there as the starting quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens while Lamar Jackson is injured. Cooper came in, was 9 of 13 for 52 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So he was still out there, played well. For the circumstances, I would say he wasn't perfect, but he didn't give the ball away, which is a good thing for the Ravens. But at the end of the day, you still lost by 17 points. You will need to lean on Derrick Henry to win games this season if Lamar Jackson is not out there. Looking at the Ravens, Derrick Henry had 8 carries for 42 yards this weekend. 8 carries. Alex and I were discussing it last week. With the Titans, Derrick Henry was averaging, I would say, 23, 24 carries a game. You have to get him in the game, involved early to hit the home run hits in the second half. And that's how you're successful with Derrick Henry. There was a stretch of time when the Titans, if Derrick Henry had an X number of touches, 20-plus touches and 100-plus yards, the Titans won the game. Plain and simple. It was always a win. But you're giving Derrick Henry 8 rushes in this game? I know you're down by 17 points, but get him involved early. Get him the ball. Let him be the playmaker for you, because Cooper Rush is not going to be the guy for you. He's not going to be the guy to win you the game. Derrick Henry will be the guy to win you the game. Do the dink and dunk throws with Cooper Rush. Little screens here and there, RPOs potentially, because you'll be able to open it up with Derrick Henry. Stacked box, Derrick Henry goes for the rush. Pull the ball as Cooper Rush and just toss it down the field. You'll have success. I promise. You have Zay Flowers. He's a burner. He can go out there and be that big ball threat if you need him to be. Derrick Henry needs to be involved more. I think that's the way that the Baltimore Ravens are going to be successful. Looking at the next opponents for the Ravens, it's not terrible. It's all at home. The Texans coming in off that huge game against Titans. I think that could be an upset alert for the Texans. The Rams come in at home. Rams are a better team, so Rams might be a little bit more difficult to play. And the Bears. So if you don't have Lamar Jackson for those 3 games, you might go 1-2, 2-1 potentially, just depending on what the Bears do. Because I don't think you're winning the Rams game without Lamar Jackson. It's going to be a rough stretch. Brad says, great job with the Titans rant. Really entertaining listen. With the injuries topic, what are your thoughts on the turf versus grass debate? Is it time for the NFL to mandate grass for player safety? That's a huge deal for the NFLPA. I know they've talked about it for years, talked about having grass instead of turf and things of that nature. I know there have been turf alternatives in the league that have been newer. I know that the Titans have a new turf that they implemented, I believe, 2 seasons ago that is more of it's like a coconut husk backfill instead of it being like the rubber pellets, like the old turf, like you see in MetLife, that it has all the injuries, which I'm assuming that's one of the main reasons too. You might probably be able to see more correlation with injuries with that older style of turf than the newer style of turf. Players are practicing on grass for the most part. I know with the Titans in particular, on their outdoor fields and their practice facility, they're on grass. They're not playing in this turf that they have in the stadium, but it is in their practice facility, the enclosed portion of it, when they go in there for rain and things of that nature. So it just depends on what the turf is. I would say that the NFLPA will probably step in at some point to talk about grass to make it more contentious. I think they're still trying to gather as much data as possible to provide a better argument. I think injuries like this will lead to a better argument. I don't know if the Miami Dolphins, if Hard Rock Stadium is turf or grass, but with Tyreek Hill's injury, I'm not sure how that goes. I think they are on grass, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to double check that. But it is an interesting topic. I still think that grass is better. It depends on where you're at. It depends on if you have the money to keep it up. If it's indoors, outdoors. I know the Cardinals have their grass, but it goes outside during the day, comes back in for games. So it just really depends on how much money the team has for upkeep. They need money for upkeep on grass if they're an indoor facility, especially. But I'm sure the NFL could probably pitch in a few dollars if they need to make it more safe for these players. Brad Keith says, Malik Neighbors also had a torn ACL at MetLife. So many stars getting hurt along with Tyreek. Yes, there are a lot of players, and Malik Neighbors is one on the long list of injuries this season that we've discussed on the show especially, and we've seen throughout the season so far. Tyreek Hill got injured this weekend, hamstring for Lamar. Malik Neighbors going down. There have been a lot of injuries this weekend, especially. Brad, he had Malik Neighbors. I believe you said you had Tyreek Hill on your fantasy too, right, Brad? Not great. I have Malik Neighbors in my money league this year as well. My team's not producing anyway. It doesn't really matter. But at the same time, the one guy that should be producing for me goes down with an ACL, torn ACL, which is not the best, and especially not good for Jackson Dart and the New York Giants moving forward. Their number one target going down with that injury for the rest of the season. Can Brian Daboll save his job without having Malik Neighbors on the field? That's a huge question for that team, but we'll discuss that later on. Hard Rock Stadium is, I'm looking now. Yes, they do play on grass. So that's an injury that was on grass, albeit it was off to the sideline. It wasn't a non-contact injury, but nonetheless. Yeah, Brad, lost both of them in fantasy. Tough scene. Definitely putting me at risk for punishment in last place. I'm biased for sure, but something needs to change. I agree. I think that players really want something to change, especially if they're seeing all their friends getting injured left and right. I'm sure the NFL will look at it as well. If they start losing money, if they start looking at these injuries and saying, okay, all these star quarterbacks are out, which a lot of them have been this season. I think there's been 5 or 6 starters that have been out for injuries so far this year. If they can relate that to the playing surface, if they can say that those injuries are because of the turf, I think you'll see more of a conversation that happens that would lead to all grass on all playing fields in the NFL. Similar to what they do in soccer, in European soccer. Everywhere they play, they have to play on grass. So I'm sure we'll surprise see something like that with FIFA, I believe. FIFA is the one, the governing body, and they say that they all have to play on grass. So if they are able to tie those two things together, the injuries of the players and then also the playing surface being turf, this offseason, I'm sure there'll be even more conversations about that because they're impacting the bottom line at that point. And if these star players are on the field, then people don't want to spend money on tickets because they don't want to go see just the B squad or the C squad out there playing games. So that's at a moment that's a moment that they would say, yes, we need to make a change and it needs to be grass. So I can see that happening very, very quickly. Very quickly. Another player that went down this weekend, Tyreek Hill, he dislocated his knee. Did not look good. If you haven't seen the video yet, you know what? Go see it. Go watch the video. It's on Twitter. His leg's not supposed to do that. And he had torn ligaments as well in his knee, including his ACL, so he is out for quite some time. His agent has come out already saying that his surgery went well earlier this week. He actually went into surgery Monday, I believe. And his agent said he will play in 2026, which is astonishing for a 31-year-old wide receiver to already make that determination. I don't feel as though, I don't know, that's a really rough injury to come back from. I don't know if I'd make an absolute statement like that. 2 days removed from the injury. No, it happened on Monday night. So I'm sorry. So it happened yesterday was the surgery. But 2 days removed from the surgery, coming out saying he's playing in 2026. Pump the brakes a little bit. I did see a meme out there, though, a video of a guy in a wheelchair, and it said when the Chiefs, when Tyreek Hill gets traded back to the Chiefs, and he stood up the wheelchair and started like crip walking. I could definitely see that happening, though. I could see Tyreek getting the hell out of Dodge in Miami if Mike McDaniel is still there as the head coach, because they got their first win. But as Thanos said in Avengers, it costs them everything. Having Tyreek Hill go down with an injury. They still have some good playmakers, though, there in Miami. I still think Darren Waller came out and he had 2 touchdowns in this game to win their first game of the season against the Jets. Again, not the best competition, but still 27-21 against the Jets. Jets have a really good defense. We've talked about it on the show. I still think they can do some good with Waddle, with Waller, and with Devon Achane. Playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Defense needs to step up for the Miami Dolphins. And the next 3 weeks, they're playing some. Next week, it's an okay opponent, but we have seen them perform very well so far this year. 2 weeks ago, especially. The Panthers, they're playing at the Panthers, and they're playing against the Chargers in Miami, and then at the Cleveland Browns. So 2 really, really good defenses in the Chargers and the Browns, and the Panthers played very well. Sorry about that. The Panthers played really well 2 weeks ago. They did get pounced on this weekend. However, they were riding on a high, and they got knocked down back to reality very, very quickly by the Patriots, nonetheless, like we were discussing earlier. But yeah, I still think that Waddle, Waller, and Achane could be big playmakers for Tua. As long as Tua stays upright. Tua got knocked in the dome in this game as well. Was okay. Did not go out of the game or anything. It didn't seem like he was in concussion protocol at all either. So should be fine. But Tua needs to stay healthy. For Mike McDaniel's sake. If he wants to keep his job, Tua needs to stay healthy. Because if he doesn't stay healthy, then he's not going to have a good enough record to keep his job at the end of the season. Looking at the next round of injuries, all of these guys got ruled out for the Niners for Thursday Night Football. Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall, and Juwan Jennings. All 3 of those guys have been ruled out for Thursday Night Football. George Kittle is still out through Week 6, so not a good look for the San Francisco 49ers heading into Week 5. Their next opponents, they're playing at the Rams this week, then at the Bucs, and then against the Falcons in San Fran. Pretty rough stretch Rams are a good team, like we've talked about a lot on the show. The Bucs, surging team. We'll see if Mike Evans is back in that game, and Chris Godwin's back as well, potentially. And then the Atlanta Falcons are coming into town, and they've been so-so this season so far. So, but if you have Mac Jones has been playing okay in relief of Brock Purdy, but if you're losing all your playmakers out there, the system can only work with only a few playmakers missing, not all of your playmakers missing. So we'll see if CMC and Cam and Mac Jones can keep the boat afloat, as they say, heading into week 5. And I think they probably will. George Kittle comes back potentially in week 6. So we will see how that goes for San Fran. Now, speaking of non-injured quarterbacks, Joe Flacco was playing for the Cleveland Browns this weekend, got benched, and Dillon Gabriel made his rookie debut in the Cleveland Browns game. They did lose, however, but with the Browns, Shador will remain QB3, which is interesting because in QB3, with QB3, Shador Sanders, he was talking to the media today about everything that was happening with this situation. And he was pantomiming all of his answers. He was mouthing the words, but no sound was coming out, showcasing his maturity or lack thereof that teams talked about in the offseason, the draft process for him when he was trying to get a starting job somewhere, still riding high as a potential first-round draft pick, falling to the 5th round. And now he's pantomiming to reporters in Cleveland. Not a good look for a kid that wants to be a starting quarterback in the league. Might be the reason why you're not a starting quarterback in the league. And funny thing is, there was that rumor that came out just a few weeks ago that the Ravens had wanted to draft Shador Sanders. They wanted to come out and draft Shador Sanders, be the backup to Lamar Jackson, but he declined because he didn't want to be a backup. But if you were with the Baltimore Ravens and you were the backup quarterback to Lamar Jackson, you would be starting potentially in week 5. Not a good look for Shador Sanders. Karma is a bitch at times. And in this situation, karma is that bitch. So that sucks for Shador, but we'll see how Dillon Gabriel performs. It's funny because Stephen A. Smith, I didn't see what he predicted. I saw a clip online when I was scrolling through Twitter, and the header was Stephen A. predicts when Shador Sanders will get his first start for the Cleveland Browns. They're really, really counting out Dillon Gabriel. And I've seen Dillon Gabriel from UCF to Oklahoma to Oregon. I think Dillon Gabriel is actually a pretty good quarterback. I think he could probably do some pretty good things with the Cleveland Browns. He seems similar to a quarterback that was dropped fairly quickly from the Browns after an injury. Baker Mayfield, to me. He has the same kind of vibe. Not as good of a vibe, but similar. I can see Dillon Gabriel being pretty good for the Browns. Having that youthful injection into their offense over Joe Flacco, has some mobility as well. I think Dillon Gabriel can do some good things for Cleveland, and Shador will just be riding the bench the entire time, which at this point he's used to. It's 4 weeks so far that he's been doing that. So hopefully someone can talk to him about his pantomiming and his maturity, because that's not going to help him win the job anywhere if he's just acting as though this is not serious to him. Should be, but it hasn't been yet. Last but not least, last story of the evening, game to watch going into week 5, and this one's going to be a good one. The Buccaneers in Seattle against the Seahawks. The Bucs are looking to rebound after their performance against the Philadelphia Eagles. That game, I don't know if you all watched that game, but the Eagles were leading mostly the entire game, but the Buccaneers were coming back with a vengeance in this game. They were so close to winning. They lost the game 31-25, and So close. So close. Egbuka in this game, let me double check what his stats were here, because he actually had a hell of a game that day for Baker Mayfield. Chris Godwin was 3 of 26, 3 for 26 yards. Egbuka had 4 receptions for 101 yards. Bucky Irving stepped up as well in this game. Instead of just running the ball, he was catching the ball as well. 5 receptions, 102 yards, and a touchdown. 2 wide receivers had receptions of 70-plus yards. Wild. Without Mike Evans, I mean, they were able to put the playmakers together, get them on the field. They produced when they needed to. Unfortunately, they fell a little bit short in this game. Baker Mayfield did have an interception, but he played well too. 22 of 40 for 289 and 2 touchdowns outside of that 1 interception. And Jalen Hurts still not doing that hot in the passing game. I guess you could say he's efficient. Not too efficient this week. 15 to 24 for 130 and 2 touchdowns. AJ Brown is not having a good year. 2 receptions, 7 yards so far this season. And one of those receptions was actually a 4-yard loss. So, not the best. Brad says Egbuka is practically a lock for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Baker is definitely in the conversation for MVP. Bucks are legit this year. And Alex Hanley has said the Bucks are legit this year. He was talking about it last year as well. I felt the same way. I like Baker Mayfield. I think Baker's been playing very, very well at a very high level, especially if a guy like Lamar Jackson is out for the season, and also if they're not winning games like they haven't been so far. The Baltimore Ravens haven't been. It opens up the door for Baker Mayfield to go in there and get the MVP. I don't know who else is playing at as high a level as Baker is right now. I mean, I guess you could say Josh Allen's still playing at a pretty high level too. But Baker is definitely up there. He's definitely in the conversation, at least in the top 2 in the league so far for MVP. I can see him getting it for sure. But yeah, I still think Bucks and Seahawks, going to be a good game. Bucks are looking for the rebound. Darnold and the Seahawks are looking just to extend their lead in the NFC West. Seahawks looking good. Quarterback, their head coach, McDonald's, looking pretty good as well as a head coach. Sam Darnold has carried on the momentum he had in Minnesota. Kevin O'Connell did a really good job developing him back into a starting quarterback in the league, and it's going to be very hard to stop him if he's able to go on a roll here, especially having the defense they have in Seattle, the defensive guru in McDonald. It's going to be a really, really good game to watch. So I'm really excited about that one. I would say also to keep an eye on Commanders and Chargers. Because Jane Daniels is probably coming back in this game for the Commanders, and the Chargers want to rebound in this game as well. They're 3-1, 2-0 at home. They want to continue that undefeated streak at home against a really, really good Commanders team. Only thing is, I don't know if McLaurin is out still. I think he is. Maybe or maybe not. He's questionable. He was a non-participant at practice today. So Terry McLaurin might be out. Deebo Samuel didn't practice as well with a heel injury. So some of the weapons will be down for the Commanders, but I still think that if Jaden Daniels is in the game, they have a shot to win. And the Chargers, though, talked about it all year. Chargers are going to be a really, really good team in the AFC West. And they've shown it so far that they're very, very good this year. And Justin Herbert will just continue to be better and better each and every week under Jim Harbaugh. So, good game to watch there. But thanks, everybody. Thanks, Brad, for tuning in. Fitz as well, chiming in the chat. Thanks, guys, for watching. If you guys haven't done so yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel, JDF Sports. Also, if you haven't been subscribed to our podcast, the audio-only version of the podcast, Out of Bounds Dillon James on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. We will be joining you back here on JDF Sports next week, most likely on Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I will confirm that on social media. I will post it everywhere. And we will see you right here on YouTube on JDF Sports. Till then, enjoy your football watching weekend. I will enjoy the Titans game at the Brooklyn Bowl, watching them probably get defeated by the Arizona Cardinals at a Bussin' with the Boys watch party, which should be pretty fun. So I'll get to see Taylor Lewan and Will Compton out there at the Brooklyn Bowl, but have to find some sort of silver lining, silver lining to the season so far. And Cam Ward hopefully will continue to show some improvement, and Brian Callahan not ruining his career already this early into his career. Thanks, everybody, once again. We'll talk to you guys next week right here on JDF Sports.